Waste has become such a significant problem in South Africa, with many communities, particularly low-income communities, having to live with the realities of pollution caused by improper waste disposal. The question is, what does the law have to say about this? Hi, Arufanisha family, and welcome to Environmental Law 101. Welcome to those of you who have just joined the family. It is great to have you here. In this video, we will examine the legal framework governing waste in South Africa, from the Constitution to the Waste Act, the rights of communities, and the obligations of government and businesses. This is important because waste is not just a technical or logistical issue, it's a legal, human rights, and environmental justice issue that affects health, dignity, and climate resilience. Before we proceed, I want to remind you that Arufanisha is available on Instagram and TikTok, so please head over there and follow us if you don't already, so that you don't miss out on all the updates and content that we share here and there. So like with any other law in South Africa, the starting point for waste regulation is the Constitution. In terms of the Constitution of South Africa, there is at least two main provisions that are applicable to waste management. The first being Section 24 of the Constitution. In terms of this section, everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, and to have that environment protected for both present and future generations. Another relevant provision in the Constitution is Section 152. This is the section that regulates local governance in South Africa. And in terms of this section, local government, that is municipalities, must ensure the provision of services to communities in a sustainable manner. They must promote social and economic development and must protect a safe and healthy environment. What this means is that any law or policy addressing waste in South Africa must respect the environmental rights, and it also places an obligation on the state and by extension to all of us to prevent pollution and ecological degradation. The second piece of law that is relevant when it comes to waste management is obviously the National Environmental Management Act, which is the mother law on environmental management and regulation in South Africa. Although NEMA does not directly regulate waste management, it does establish key principles to safeguard and protect the environment and people's lives. And these principles include, firstly, no pollution. This means that pollution and degradation of the environment must be avoided, and where it is unavoidable, it must be minimized and remedied. Linked to this would be the duty of care, which mandates that anyone that handles waste must take steps to prevent pollution or harm to the environment and to people. The second principle relevant is one around no waste at all. So this principle basically says that waste must be avoided, or where it cannot be completely avoided, it must be minimized, reused, or recycled where possible, and otherwise disposed of in a responsible manner. The next relevant principle will be the principle of environmental justice. This essentially says that environmental justice must be pursued to prevent adverse environmental impacts from being unfairly distributed against any person, particularly where vulnerable and disadvantaged individuals are concerned. This means that no community should have to bear the disproportionate burden of waste and pollution. The other principle relevant here is the polluter pays principle, which is quite linked to the duty of care. So those responsible for pollution must be responsible for the costs associated with remedying such pollution and the adverse health impacts that it causes. This means that waste producers are legally and financially accountable for the cleanup of waste. The last principle I want to touch on that's relevant is the cradle to grave principle. This basically says that the waste generator is responsible from the point of creation of the product until its safe final disposal. So if you recall from our last video on the environmental regulation in South Africa, NEMA is the mother, but then there are other special environmental management acts that are established under NEMA to regulate specific environmental aspects. So one of those is the National Environmental Management Waste Act, and this is the key legislation regulating waste management in South Africa. It provides a comprehensive legal framework for managing waste in a way that is sustainable, equitable, and aligned with the Constitution. This act defines what waste is, classifies different types of waste, and sets out how waste must be managed throughout its entire life cycle, from generation to final disposal. In terms of the Waste Act, waste is defined as any substance, material, or object that is unwanted, rejected, abandoned, discarded, or disposed of by its holder, regardless of whether it can be reused, recycled, or recovered. So this act basically established different types of waste. The list is quite long, but for the purposes of this video, I'll just stick to at least 3 types of waste that are identified in terms of this act. The first being general waste, so that's your usual household refuse, food scraps, garden waste, office paper, packaging. The next category is hazardous waste, which is used motor oil, chemical sludge, e-waste containing heavy metals. And then there is priority waste, which is your plastic packaging, electronic waste, tires, and also there's industrial waste, which includes slag from smelters, mining tailings, factory residues, and ash from boilers, right? The list goes on. So what is critical about the Waste Act is that it promotes what is known as a waste hierarchy. This is essentially how waste is supposed to be dealt with, right? So the first thing when it comes to waste is we have to try and avoid waste as much as possible. So that's the first part in the hierarchy. Where we cannot avoid waste, the second part is reduce the use of waste or the discarding of waste. Then if we can't reduce, we have to try and reuse waste. Where we can't, we then have to try and recycle. Where we can't recycle, try to recover the waste. Then the last thing, which is a measure of last resort, is disposing of such waste. So the hierarchy essentially is avoid, reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and then dispose as a measure of last resort. You have to go through all of these processes before we get to disposal. However, what's important to note here is that often people rush to dispose of items before considering the other ways to utilize waste. And this is particularly true when it comes to things like fashion waste, plastic waste, and food waste. So generally now when you're dealing with waste, we kind of have to think about this hierarchy, and you have to consider, have I tried to avoid, have I tried to reuse, recycle before we just discard. Another important piece of legislation when it comes to waste management is the Municipal Systems Act. This act provides a framework for municipalities in South Africa, which enables them to move towards the social and economic upliftment of local communities and ensure universal access to essential services. So under this act, municipalities are responsible for providing basic services and responding to community needs, and also investigating and providing prompt responses to community complaints. So essentially, when it comes to the provision of basic services such as waste collection and disposal of waste and so forth, municipalities are the primary responsible authorities. However, it's important to note that the responsibility when it comes to waste management is across all the spheres of government. So at national level, the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, DFFE, develops the policy and regulates high impact waste activities. And then the provincial environmental departments, they oversee regional planning and licensing of waste in South Africa. Then the local municipalities, these provide household waste services and enforce local waste bylaws. And the Green Scorpions, which are officially known as the Environmental Management Inspectors, are responsible for monitoring compliance and enforcing environmental laws, including waste management. Now, just zoning in a little bit more on municipalities, they play a key role in waste management. And in terms of the Waste Act, municipalities must deliver waste management services, including waste removal, waste storage, and waste disposal. They must prevent harm and enforce waste laws in their communities. And they must manage waste in such a way that it does not endanger people's health or harm the environment, and ensure that waste is disposed of in an environmentally sound manner. So as a community, your primary point of contact for addressing waste pollution is your local municipality. Each municipality, just as any other government department responsible for waste, must have a waste officer that you can approach for assistance or to report any violations in your area, such as illegal waste dumping or municipal failure to collect waste. You can also approach the municipal manager or your ward councillor to report any waste issues that you may be facing and demand accountability or delivery of services in your community. The current problem, though, is that many municipalities are undercapacitated and budget constraints are often cited when it comes to implementing and enforcing their obligations, especially when it comes to waste management. So this has resulted in a lot of communities, particularly marginalized communities, not receiving adequate waste services and people dumping waste in open areas, polluting the area and posing a danger to people's health. This is an environmental injustice in itself, which needs to be addressed. Therefore, pushing for municipal accountability and demanding service delivery is crucial, particularly in a climate crisis. Issues such as illegal dumping are environmental crimes which must actually be addressed, and municipalities must take actions to stop this crime and protect the community's rights to a healthy environment. Other key components of the Waste Act also include waste licensing and compliance. This mainly relates to industrial activities. So certain waste management activities, they require what is known as a waste license, especially when you're dealing with hazardous waste, waste incineration, waste to energy operations, or disposal of waste into landfills. So generally, operating without a waste license or breaching a waste license conditions is a criminal offense, and holders of waste also have to maintain records, ensure lawful transport and storage, and take all reasonable measures to prevent harm. Another significant development in South African waste law is the extended producer responsibility, or what is known as the EPR principle. This is a legal mechanism that shifts the responsibility for the end-of-life management of products to the producers of those products, that is manufacturers, importers, or brand owners. We will be delving deep into the EPR principle in the coming weeks, so I'm not going to say much about it now, but I just want you to know about it so that when we talk about it, you kind of have an idea of this. Essentially, we have quite a strong legal framework when it comes to waste management and regulation in South Africa. However, we still find ourselves in a situation where we are facing significant waste challenges. So for example, over 90 million tons of waste is generated each year, but less than 10% is actually recycled. There is a widespread of illegal dumping, especially in townships and rural areas. Landfills are overflowing, and many municipalities, they lack the capacity to just deal with this waste. There is inadequate support for the informal recycling sector, which plays a key role in the recovery of waste. And also hazardous and electronic waste are growing rapidly. So these challenges, they just highlight the gap between what the law says and the implementation of the law. So what are your rights as a community? So under the Waste Act and the Constitution, communities do have several key rights, especially when it comes to waste management, right? So the first being, we all have a right to an environment that is not harmful to our health or well-being, and there's the right to public participation in decisions about new waste facilities, such as landfills or incinerators. There is the right to access environmental information, the right to report illegal activities and seek enforcement. This legal framework reinforces that waste is a justice issue, especially when poor and marginalized communities live near polluted sites. So what can you do as a community? Because the law isn't just for lawyers or officials, it empowers all of us to act. So now that you know what the legal framework is, what can you do? As an individual, you do play a crucial role in waste management as well in your own space. Firstly, separate waste at source and recycle where possible. If you want to see something that other people are doing when it comes to separating waste at source and trying to do different things with waste, please have a look at the last episode on how the youth in eMalahleni are actually turning waste into economy. And then the second thing that you can do is to avoid single-use products such as plastic bags, right, and opt for more durable ones. Compost organic waste, and you can use this for your food gardens as well. You can also support waste pickers and cooperatives that do such things, and report dumping or non-compliance with local authorities or the green scorpions, and actually seek enforcement. So as communities, you also do have a watchdog role when it comes to waste management and ensuring that there's compliance of the law and enforcement of the law by the relevant officials. As a community, you can also demand access to clean and equitable waste services, participate in environmental impact assessment processes and municipal IDP processes, because this is where you can address such challenges and ensure that they don't continue to happen in your community. And you can also demand service delivery and cleanups. Advocate for justice in areas where landfills and facilities are located. Use legal avenues to challenge harmful practices, now that you kind of have an idea of what the law is and what you can do to use it. In conclusion, basically, South Africa's waste law is comprehensive and grounded in our constitution. It recognizes that waste is not just about pollution, it's about health, dignity, equity, and accountability. But law alone isn't enough. Implementation, community awareness, and public participation is critical. So as activists or engaged citizens, understanding this legal framework empowers us to demand better waste systems and drive systemic change. Alright, so that's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to join the family if you haven't already. And next up, we're actually going to be discussing how the waste challenges that we are facing in South Africa link to the global waste challenges and the global legal framework as it pertains to waste, and how you can also use it to enforce your rights. So stay tuned so you don't miss out on the upcoming videos and content on this topic. You can also visit our website to learn more and access a free fact sheet on South Africa's waste law, just to guide and assist you in enforcing your rights. The link to this resource is in the description box below. Comment down below what you think we should be doing about waste in South Africa, and don't forget to share this video with others so that they may also be aware of their rights. It also helps to grow our family when you share. Until the next time, stay true, keep fighting, and keep the edge.